All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight for our Trees Talk series. And today we are going to talk about why trees change color and how to get that color in your landscape. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Paul Ries. He's a board member with us at Trees Knoxville and an ISA certified arborist and an adjunct assistant professor in the Forestry, Wildlife, and Fisheries Department at the University of Tennessee. So I could tell you a little bit about what he's going to talk about, but he's going to get ready to talk about it. So we'll just let that happen. And I do want to remind you that on the 19th, the city of Knoxville, their tree board is having another tree talk with Lee Rumble, who's a UT extension. He's going to be talking about selecting trees and how to make that successful in your landscape. I'm sorry, that is not the title completely, but he'll be talking about that's on the 19th at 7 p.m. And again, you can go to Eventbrite to register for that. Or if you have any questions, email me at treesknoxville@gmail.com. And remember, volunteer foresters, we have a chat, a happy hour on October the 22nd, I think. Something like that. I don't know why it's not on my calendar back behind me, which is why I keep looking behind me. And if you have any questions about that, you can email me. And I wanted to also remind you, volunteer foresters, that we're having a pruning workshop. So if you have any questions about the pruning workshop that's just for y'all, give me an email or a phone call. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ries. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Thank you, Tracy. Let me share my screen here. All right, can you see my PowerPoint? Great, okay. So thanks for the invitation. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you about one of my favorite topics, fall color. I have to say this is one of my favorite times of year, and we're fortunate here in East Tennessee that we have a very diverse palette of trees, and therefore a diverse palette of tree colors that happen each fall. Here in the Southern Appalachian Mountains, we have an incredible diversity of different tree species that aren't found in other parts of the country. So our fall color here it is rivaled probably only by that of New England, which has a similar type of collection of fall color trees. But it's really the diversity of trees that we see in our landscape that give us the attractive fall color that we're known for. So my talk today is basically going to cover a couple of things. One, we'll talk about the science behind why trees actually change color. And by trees, we mean deciduous trees. We won't really be talking much about conifers, although I'll get to that a little bit. Conifers do have some color variation, but it's not quite as striking as deciduous trees. Then we'll talk about tree selection tips, about how to get fall color into your yard or how to plant trees with fall color in mind. And then I'd like to do a question and answer session to see what questions you might have. And Tracy, I'll ask you to moderate that. If you have questions, put it into the chat box, and then Tracy will ask me, and I'll try to answer them best I can. You'll notice a lot of photographs of fall color, as you see the one here on the screen. This is taken in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is right here in our backyard. Not all the fall color pictures I have are going to be from home landscapes, but you'll notice that our native forests have a lot of the same color that we want to emulate at home. So let's talk about why trees actually change color. Understand that this is really a natural process, and it's brought on by climate, by the fact that our days are getting shorter and our temperature are changing as we get ready for winter. It's really a matter of the deciduous trees preparing for their impending dormancy. Of course, as you know, they lose their leaves every fall, and then they put a new crop of leaves out every spring. In the process of that normal biological cycle, what happens is the trees change color. So we'll get into kind of the science behind why this happens. First of all, understand that the leaves of deciduous trees change color due to a combination of environmental factors. So during the summer months, these trees put out chlorophyll, which is the green that you see, and that's an abundance of pigments caused by photosynthesis. Now, these green pigments capture the energy from the sun, and they use it to manufacture simple sugars that are necessary for the tree's growth. This whole process is called photosynthesis, something most of us vaguely recall from 6th grade science class. But basically, the short, cool days bring on these natural changes as the trees begin to shut down for the winter, or they stop photosynthesizing, thus revealing what we know as fall colors, or the natural pigments that are present in the leaves. So the various colors that we happen to see in the landscape are really due to the physics of sunlight striking the pigments in the leaves. So I get asked a lot when people find out I'm a forester. A common question is, are we going to have good fall color this year? Well, there's a lot of factors that influence fall color. The best fall color is seen in years that we have warm but not too hot sunny days, we have cool nights but not freezing, and we have adequate rainfall. Those are the ingredients for good fall color. Conversely, drought, early frost, a low differential temperature from night to day, and wind and rain can result in poor fall color. Now, this question will probably come up in the question and answer, so I'm going to answer it right now. Yes, I think this actually is going to be a good fall color year, and I'll tell you why. We had a very active rainfall year. We had a lot of rain this year here in East Tennessee, and we have had, of late, we've had cool nights and warm days. And that's about to get really dramatic here later on this week. Actually, we're due for some pretty cool temperatures in the evening. But remember back to last year. I don't know if those of you paid attention to the weather last year, but last year's fall color was impacted by a stretch of about 3 weeks from late September to early October, where the nighttime temperatures only went to about 70. They didn't really fall below that and get a cool night. So we didn't have a huge differential from night to day temperatures, and that impacted the quality of our fall color. Now, when we talk about weather impacting fall color, we can talk about a couple of different things. The fall color that we see at any particular time throughout the fall period versus the length of fall color. So you can talk about the quality of fall color at any given time or the quantity of the fall color season. And those can be two different things. So what else influences fall color? Well, first of all, we need to realize that healthier trees are going to exhibit more vivid and more diverse colors than unhealthy trees were. That's kind of a no-brainer when you think about it. The healthier a tree is, the better its leaves are going to look, whether they're green or whether they're in fall color. And also, because we live in the mountains or in the foothills of the mountains, we understand that fall color is going to occur at higher elevations first due to that difference in climate. So this past weekend, I drove across Newfound Gap in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and there's color changes there that are not happening down here in the valley closer to the Tennessee River, for example. So some facts about fall color that we need to cover here before we get too far along, and that is that we need to understand the degree of fall color varies. It's highly variable. It can vary from a single tree or from tree to tree. And when I talk about we'll plant a particular species to get red in our yard, we understand that that tree doesn't automatically turn red. It might start out yellow, it might go to orange, and it might eventually be red. Trees have that variability. So some trees have a single fall color, while others move through a phase of colors over the course of any given fall. So the first rule of fall color then is that it's almost always variable, as you see here from the maple leaves. I purposely picked maple leaves that are red, orange, and yellow and put them next to each other just so you can see the variability that is found within a single species or a single genus in this case. So back to kind of the science of fall color. Fall colors are influenced by the presence of the pigments in the leaves. Now these pigments, as I mentioned, hang on, sorry about that. Fall colors are present in the leaves at all times. These are chemicals or pigments called carotenoids and xanthophylls. These are the oranges and yellows that are present all year, but they're masked by that chlorophyll throughout the growing season, and hence the leaves are green. As the chlorophyll ceases to be produced, as photosynthesis tapers off, those pigments that are present in the leaves come to the forefront. Now there's another one called anthocyanins, which are the red and the purples. Those kick into gear. They aren't always present in this through the growing year. They can be. They're not always present through the growing year, but they're into hyperdrive in the fall as the photosynthesis stops taking place and the reds and the purples appear. Now, I remind people that brown is a color. It's not necessarily the color we're always after when we're looking for fall color, but brown is a color. The brown, the tans, the light brown and dark brown that you see in leaves are caused by tannins, which is another pigment present in a leaf. So how do we get that fall color? Well, first of all, we think about planting trees with fall color in mind. Now that we've talked about the different things that cause fall color, we have to have the right species in our landscape, in our yards, that are going to give us the fall color that we desire. So for example, I have about a half-acre woods at my house here in Maryville, and what I have determined is I have a lot of yellow and I have a lot of red. What I'm missing is orange. So I've planted a couple of species to get some orange so that I have a bit of a mix of fall colors, and I've specifically located trees so that I can watch the color change through my woods. Okay, that's a tree nerd thing to do, I agree, but it's going to make, in a few years, it's going to make for a really, really beautiful scene. So we want to locate trees in the correct locations to maximize tree health. What do we mean by this? Well, every tree species has a set of preferences or requirements of where it's going to grow the best. These could be soil related. Some trees prefer more well-drained soils. Some trees tolerate wet soils. Other trees tolerate shade. Some don't. Some are what we call intermediate. Well, they'll do well in part shade or part sun. This whole principle of identifying trees, and I'm sure Lee's going to talk about this next week in the session that Tracy mentioned. This whole idea is called the right tree in the right place, and I want to talk about that real quick because it really does factor into the quality of fall color that you're going to get in your home landscape. The idea of right tree, right place is that you pick a location to plant a tree, and then you figure out what trees are suitable for that particular requirement, as opposed to planting it or purchasing a tree that you really like and then figuring out where to plant it. So the right tree, right place means the place dictates what tree species that you're going to plant. Now, in a situation where you want to plant trees for fall color, you might say, I want to plant a dogwood. Well, if you want to plant a dogwood, you can't just plant a dogwood anywhere in your yard or anywhere in the woods. You have to figure out what sunny spot. That doesn't mean that they're going to not do well. That means that's just the best for them. So a tree that's planted off-site may survive, but it may not thrive. And the best fall color then is observed in trees that are both healthy and planted in an area that are suited to these growing preferences or these growing requirements. Again, mostly related to soil quality and to shade, what we call shade tolerance. So how do you get that color? Let's talk about some specific colors and some specific species that you can plant in your yard to try to improve the quality of fall color in your own landscape. We'll start out with red because that's really people's favorites. Red tends to be the one people kind of ooh and ah over. And there are a number of species that can produce red pigment or can produce red color in your landscape. Most of the maples, some of the oaks, sweetgum, black gum, which is also called tupelo, dogwood, and sourwood are probably the primary species that you want to consider in your landscape. Now, as I talk about these particular colors, I'm going to mention a couple of trees in greater detail and show you some photographs of those particular species in fall color. I'm not going to treat all of these, and I specifically want to talk about dogwood. Now, here in East Tennessee, dogwood is sort of like our signature tree. It's, we have a Dogwood Arts Festival, and we have a lot of dogwoods. It's a beautiful tree, both for spring flower and for fall color. I'm not going to talk about dogwood quite as much as I might, but I'm going to talk about some other species that you may not be as familiar with. So let's start with one of the oaks. Scarlet Oak, Quercus coccinia, is a lesser known oak, perhaps. We often tend to see northern red oak, southern red oak, post oak, willow oak, some of the other oaks, but for the best reliable fall color of all the oaks, I would argue it's Scarlet Oak. This particular tree has a beautiful fall color to it, a couple of nice hues of red, and if you're looking for a large shade tree, Scarlet Oak is one that I would recommend. I'll mention a couple as I go through. I don't know, I think I'm talking about 10 different trees today in this presentation. Most of the trees I mentioned today are going to be native to the Northeast, or to the Southeast rather. There's a couple of notable exceptions, and this is one of them. This is Paperbark Maple, or Acer griseum. It's actually a native of China, which is something we'd much rather have than COVID-19 right now. But this is a great medium-sized shade tree, and it turns a beautiful red. Now, again, it's not a native tree, so you might not want to plant it in a wooded setting, but if you've got a place in your front yard that's ideal, this is one that you consider. So as I said, it's native to central China. As many of our maples that we plant, like Japanese maple, for example, are native to Asia, to different parts of Asia. This is really a great tree that I'd urge you to consider. Again, it is not native, so it's not necessarily a tree where you want to plant in a native situation.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
If it's okay.
Yes.
How big does, you might have said it, but I might have missed it. How big does the Paperbark maple get in height?
It's actually one of the medium-sized maple trees. It's not going to get as large as, say, a red maple, a sugar maple, or a silver maple might. But it's going to be bigger than a Japanese maple. So I would say in most landscapes around here, you're going to see, it's kind of 40 to 50 feet, kind of
okay.
size. But it's not going to get big. It's not going to get 60, 80, 100 like some of the other maples could. So, and it's not
too big for the space I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's here's the thing: it's a slower growing tree. So you may want to take that into consideration. The other factor I should mention about Acer griseum is it has a beautiful winter bark, and it has a peeling or exfoliating bronze-colored bark. As you can see in this middle, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but in this middle photograph right here, you can see a little sense of that. So it has some other season interest in addition to fall.
Nice, thank you.
Yep, Nyssa sylvatica, black gum, also called Tupelo, is one of my absolute favorites. I have a couple of these in my woods, and I show you this leaf because it's a great example. The image at right you see is both green, yellow, and red on the exact same leaf, and that goes to back to my earlier principle of tree of fall color, is that it is variable, and this is pretty common. But as you can see in the left image, this tree is reliably red, and take a look at this one. The one on the right is probably one of the most beautiful specimens of Nyssa sylvatica I've ever seen. Fire engine red. The tree on the left is just going into fall color, so you can see some of it's green, some of it's yellow, some of it's red, all on the same tree. Again, Nyssa sylvatica, large-sized tree, native to the southern Appalachians, great option for you. Another one of my absolute favorite red trees is Sourwood, Oxydendrum arboreum. This is a tree that has a number of things interest to it as well. You see the seed pods in the lower left-hand picture, and also in the upper left-hand one. It's a fairly reliable fall color red. Also borders on purple a little bit. We'll talk more about purple trees momentarily. This is a small to medium-sized growing tree that will grow in a lot of conditions. The best thing you can do is put it at the edge of a woods where it's getting some full southern exposure sun, but it also has a little bit of shade to it. The more sun it has, the more likely it's going to flower. But Sourwood's a great tree. All right, how do I get that color? Orange. My two favorite orange trees are probably sugar maple and sassafras. And again, full disclosure, these are both trees that start out green, move to yellow, sometimes have red, but predominantly have a nice orange hue to them. So sugar maple, I have to admit, most of these pictures I've taken that you see in the slide show today are pictures that have been in my catalog for many years, except for this one I took yesterday. I drove by this tree yesterday, and I had to like pull over and take a picture of this because it was just such a beautiful specimen of sugar maple, and you can see the really excellent fall color. Red maple is reliably red. Sugar maple is quite more variable. You can have yellow, red, and orange on a single sugar maple, or in a progression across the fall color season. But sugar maple, definitely one to consider. Sassafras albidum, another native tree to the southern Appalachians. Another tree that is, you could have yellow, green, orange, red on the same tree. But it has a pretty distinct orange phase. And as I mentioned to you, in my woods, I've planted both sassafras and sugar maple because I want more orange right now. And this is a great tree. Sassafras is sometimes known as mitten tree. It has 3 different leaf shapes to it. It's a little unusual. It has an entire leaf, a sort of a mitten shape that looks like this, and then it has the one, as you see on the left, that has some deep sinuses and a kind of a central a point to it. But sassafras is a great tree for your landscape, and something I highly recommend. All right, how do we get that color? Purple. Now, I would say that Sweetgum and Dogwood are probably the most reliable purple trees that you want to think about. Full disclosure here, there are some ash cultivars and some flowering pear cultivars that provide us with some nice purple color as well, but they're problematic for other reasons. Ash, if you're not familiar with emerald ash borer, it's a pest that has been decimating our ash trees here in the eastern U.S. at least, and is present in the Knoxville area. So I'm really not recommending you plant ash, but I will tell you that autumn purple ash, autumn applause ash are some great cultivars for ash color. But if you plant it now, you run the risk of that tree is going to die because of emerald ash borer. Flowering pear is another tree that has a beautiful purple color, but particularly the Bradford cultivar of flowering pear has significant drawbacks to it from a structural standpoint, and from a potential invasive standpoint as well. So I'm going to talk about Sweetgum today, and I do recognize that there are other species that give us a purple fall color, but they have other drawbacks that make them less desirable to us. So Sweetgum, Liquidambar styraciflua, again, great tree. Probably the most reliable purple color, but it doesn't start out purple. It starts out kind of yellow, it goes to orange, goes to red, goes to purple. This is probably the most colorful of the fall color of the deciduous trees when it comes to a fall color standpoint. It has a number of desirable characteristics and a few undesirable ones. If you recognize these little spiny balls that are the seed pods, if you get those underneath your lawnmower, you can experience some pretty significant flying projectiles. But overall, it's a pretty nice tree. I'll throw this particular shot in here and have you look at this scene of trees across this line. You could see a variety of different fall colors in this image. You see in front of the bus and in front of the car there, you see 4 different trees. And you can see green and red and yellow and orange and purple. All of those trees are Sweetgums. So you can see, again, back to variability here. Fall color is always variable. And Sweetgum is one of those trees where I have seen all 4 colors on one tree at one time. Just a really unusual characteristic of that particular tree. All right, how do I get that color yellow? Now I left yellow for last simply because it's probably the most ubiquitous. In fact, I was out for a drive the other day and I was noticing, and my wife commented, "Oh, there's a lot of trees that turn yellow." And I said, there sure are. Here's a list of them. And this is not a complete list. There are just a lot of trees that have a yellow color to us. I'm gonna focus on two here. That I think provides some of the most reliable fall color, but certainly a lot of others that you could look at. The first is our native redbud, eastern redbud, Cercis canadensis, heart-shaped leaf, fairly reliable fall color. This is a small tree suitable for gardens. Oftentimes has a multi-stem type of form to it, but can also be found in a single stem, or can be trained to a single stem if you get into that tree and do early structural pruning with it. The next tree I want to mention is ginkgo biloba. This again is a native of Asia, but it is a fabulous tree for fall color. The interesting thing about ginkgo is it's never any other color other than green and yellow. You'll never see an orange, you'll never see a red. It's always reliably yellow. And the interesting thing about ginkgo is it tends to be a tree that drops all its leaves in a very short period of time. So you can see there's actually one very famous ginkgo tree that's very large and very old, and you can see when it drops its leaves, it's just a big pile of yellow kind of at the base. A caveat with ginkgo is illustrated in the lower left-hand photo, and that is ginkgo is a dioecious tree, which means it has male trees and female trees on separate trees, not on the same tree, but on separate male and female sex parts on different trees. And those are the female fruit that have, how do I describe this? Highly odoriferous. Yeah, it stinks, and people do not like the smell of it. So be careful where you plant that, and it is generally most arborists will recommend that you consider planting a male cultivar of that. But again, it's a great fall color tree. So, there's when Tracy asked me if I would give a tree talk at some point, I said, absolutely, I want to talk about fall color because it's one of my favorite topics. And fall is really a great time for tree planting. We think of planting trees in the spring or in the winter, but fall is a good time. Starting within the next couple weeks here, you could plant trees in the late fall period to give that tree a head start on spring. But it's important to pay close attention to those site requirements for the species that you like, and again, select the tree species with future color in mind. That's kind of the point of this particular presentation. So again, here's a very beautiful, anybody recognize that tree? I just talked about it. That's a sourwood, beautiful red sourwood. This one happens to be in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but you could get that in your landscape. Again, beautiful fall color, very reliable red. And my advice to you is go forth and plant with fall color in mind. So thanks for attending this presentation today. I've purposely made it not too long, and I wanted to leave time for questions. So please enter your questions in the chat box, and we'll let Tracy moderate that.
Look at Fred, he's first. Actually, Fred, I had one more question. I'm gonna get in front of you. On one of your slides, Paul, you said, I have my notes say trees planted, and then you use the term off-site. I don't know exactly what you meant by that.
So let's say a dogwood, for example. So dogwood is a tree that likes it likes intermediate to full sun. Okay, so if you planted a dogwood underneath a canopy of a whole lot of other trees, it's not going to do well. It's off-site because it is in a location that it's not going to get enough sun.
Okay.
Simultaneously, if you put a dogwood out in the middle of your yard with no other trees around it, it's going to get too hot because it's going to get full sun and it won't do as well. So dogwood likes a slightly sheltered type of kind of intermediate towards the full sun. If you're going to err on the full sun side of the requirements of that. But the idea is that you understand the requirements of each different species of trees, and then make your site selections, accordingly.
Fred has a really good question here, and it's about the ginkgo. And I want to also let y'all know that if you want to smell a bat like ginkgo, so horrible, over by the Knoxville Police Department, what is right next door to that? Whatever the.
Oh, I lost your sound, Tracy. You muted yourself.
Sorry, my cat
Your
muted
you.
Hi, everyone. So over by the Knoxville Police Department, what's right next to it? The Coliseum? Is that what's right next to the police department over there? Come wintertime, it stinks. Like during the parade, because when I had to pull up to do the parade last year and we're all waiting in the line, there's all these female ginkgo trees, and we just were like, it was just horrible. So Fred has a great question, and it is really good. How do you tell the difference between a male and a female ginkgo?
By the presence of fruit. There's no other way to do it, actually. Actually, there isn't. The trees are exactly the same, other than that the female has fruit. And so probably the best thing to do is to buy a cultivar, cultivated variety that clearly is designated as a male tree. Now, let me tell you something that you may not be familiar with, and that is some cultures, particularly from Asia, actually value that fruit because they make like a jam or a jelly out of it. So I don't mean to disparage that particular tradition, but just understand that if you're going to plant it in your yard, you may have to deal with that smell.
It does smell. It smells so bad, but it is like, so when you're reading like, oh, ginkgo's good for this, good for that. Ginkgo does have a lot of medicinal qualities, and I used to be way more versed on that than I am right now. So let me see. So Fred has a question. Someone else has got to have a question. It was really a good presentation, Paul. I don't see anything else coming up in the chat.
Fred, you're on mute. Yeah, we need to unmute Fred here.
There we go. There
we go.
I thought by putting the space bar, you could just unmute yourself.
I think you can, but you have to hold the space bar down.
I did. I was holding it down. So anyway, it wasn't working. But I know that the male, the male and female ginkgo thing, and you don't really know until it's too late. I mean, you're committed to this thing about 15 years before you got to know there's going to be fruit.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind that female fruit's only like for a couple of weeks of the year. It's really, you just got to tolerate that. But yeah.
Yeah. And there are other trees that are dioecious that have male and female in different trees. Kentucky coffee tree is another one, for example. So, but most trees have male and female flowers on the same tree.
Paul, you mentioned the dogwood. We're talking about the Cornus floridia, but what about the Cornus dogwoods from Japan?
Yes.
Are they in the same boat as the native ones?
So interestingly, there's Cornus kousa, or kousa dogwood, Kousa. That's an Oriental version of that, an Asiatic version of that, if you will. And that's a great tree, actually. It tends to be a little different than the Cornus florida. It is a little hardier. That's not usually an issue here because it doesn't get that cold. There's actually also a native Pacific dogwood to the West Coast, out in the Pacific Northwest, out there. But Cornus florida probably is the most ubiquitous one that you're going to see here. Same thing with birches. I mentioned yellow, birches. Our native birch here is the Allegheny birch. That's a nice tree. It's a little less common in the landscape, more common in the woods. But you could, we often see European birches here, which are kind of those weeping versions. I'm not a big fan of those. Those generally have a lot of structural issues and a lot of pest issues. But there's a birch from Asia called Jacquemonte birch. That's very white bark, white exfoliating, peeling bark. That's pretty attractive. So again, there's a pest called bronze birch borer that you have to be cognizant of. So there is no perfect tree. They all have some drawbacks to them, but it's a great example.
So Paul, the native birch, is that a river birch or a paper birch?
So it's a more of a paper birch. The river birch is Betula nigra, which is also native, but probably the more common one you're going to see is the Allegheny birch here. River birch. There are some nice cultivars of river birch that have a pretty good form and nice exfoliating bark. So river birch is a great example. Again, fall color wise, it's not something you would necessarily always plant for fall color. It's pretty reliably yellow, but it doesn't have maybe as a striking fall color as some of the others.
Paul, I think I have a very unique ginkgo. I have a weeping ginkgo.
Oh.
The weeping ginkgos tend to have this different leaf to the standard ginkgo leaf.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a weeping ginkgo that has the traditional ginkgo leaf.
Okay.
And apparently that's unusual, but
it is.
Anyway, well, people have been after me. It was actually given to me as a gift, but people are after me as a cutting, But it's pretty. It sounds pretty unique, but yeah.
Send me a picture of it in fall color. I'd like to see it.
Hey, Paul, you didn't really answer my question about the Coosa dogwood. Has it got the same environmental sort of conditions as the Cornus fluidia?
Yes.
It prefers a little bit of not too much. It prefers sun, but not too much sun.
Yeah. So when we talk about shade tolerances, it's basically it's kind of on less than 6 hours of sunlight, 6 hours of sunlight, and more than 6 hours of sunlight. And most of the dogwoods are right in that middle intermediate range. And Coosa dogwood is the same tolerance really as the Cornus florida.
That's a really good segue because Rosalind would like to know, is there any difference in color between the older and newer dogwoods? And I'm assuming you mean age and not like newer hybrids.
Yeah, no, typically from a fall color standpoint, a dogwood tree, a single dogwood tree is going to have the same fall color, as a young tree versus an old tree. What will be different is the flower. As the younger trees will tend not to flower as much, and so the tree needs to get a little larger before it has a good flowering year to it. But generally the fall color is about the same. I do think that dogwood's one of those trees you have to baby a little bit, when it's young, and you may not get excellent fall color out of it until it gets a little more established in the landscape.
All right, we have a bunch that just popped up. So Jan says she's in a townhouse setting, and she has a new Asian chain tree planted in a spot for one more. You said red buds are small, which would work. Isn't there a red bud that has more yellow in the leaves during summer? The tree I'm replacing was a crabapple, which was beautiful, but it had a fungus, and I was told not to plant that again.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the Asian chain tree is. There's a couple of things it could be. A golden chain tree, perhaps, which is kind of a weedy, leggy looking thing. Golden rain tree is actually probably a better tree. That's a Colorateria. There are some different red buds you can get. So you can get cultivars of redbud. There's one called forest pansy, which has more of a purple leaf to it, kind of a deep green to purple leaf. So if you're looking at trees, if you're wanting interest during the summer, you might look at some different redbud cultivars that are bred for some different colors. But most of our native, the pure non-cultivar redbuds are going to be green and then yellow, and that's pretty much the option for it.
Okay, so Rosalind would like to clarify that she did mean newer, as in newer ones developed that are fungus resistant. So maybe some of these newer hybrids, they have a different color than I guess our heirloom ones?
Yeah, so the idea of a cultivar or cultivated variety is that they are bred for certain characteristics. It might be bred for shape, it might be bred for fall color. It's also could be bred for disease resistance. And so So research that carefully. Look at the different cultivars that are available on the market, and check with your garden center or nursery for something that's going to fit that setting. Regarding the dogwoods, the question you had, the dogwoods, as far as fungus resistant, that has to do with a disease, Rosalind, called anthracnose. And anthracnose is sort of a fungal disease that strikes dogwoods and some other species as well. And the answer to your question is yes, some of the newer ones that are coming onto the market, again, those are cultivars, are going to be bred for more resistance to that fungus.
Does that mean the Kousa dogwood too? The Kousa dogwood's a bit more...
Interestingly, Kousa as a species. See, keep in mind, when we talk about dogwoods, Cornus florida, Cornus is the genus and Florida is the species. In this case, we're talking about Cornus Kousa, Cornus, again, the genus, but Kousa, the species. Anthracnose does not affect Kousa dogwood to the degree, it's not as susceptible as a species as Cornus florida is.
Jerry has a good question too. He'd like to know, is the purple leaf maple a Norway maple cultivar?
It is. So typically that's going to be what's called a Schwedler. That's the name of it, Schwedler, Schwedler, Schwedler Norway maple. And Norway maple cultivars, not all of them, but some of them are selected to have purple leaf all year long. So that's not the fall color, that's the summer color as well. So yes, it is.
Well, as far as I can tell, there's other questions. Elizabeth had written something to me, but it wasn't in regards to fall color. And it looks like, hold on, I thought it looks like she had left, but like Glenn has a question while I figure out if Elizabeth has left the meeting or not. Glenn says, with some leaves showing more than one color, they must have more than one pigment. How does the leaf know which pigment to show first?
Okay. So part of that, Glenn, has to do with the pigment that is known for, that color is known for. So for example, a particular species such as willow or honey locust or ash, the yellow is going to be the dominant pigment. So that's what's going to occur. With maple, you have a couple of different ones present, and it's kind of it's a factor of the environment. So it's not that the tree knows which one to show. It's more that what the weather conditions and the climatic conditions are going to affect that tree in a different way, and that's what's going to appear.
Okay, so Ellie says, it says purple Norway maple Crimson King ? Or Schwedler.
I got it. So Crimson King is another named cultivar. I mentioned Schwedler, but that's not the only one. That's just the one that came to my mind. But you're absolutely right. Crimson King is another named cultivar of Norway maple, and again, that's a purple leaf maple. Norway, however, interestingly, so you know what Norway's normal fall color is? It's yellow. So if you have a straight Norway maple, it's going to have a yellow fall color to it. Typically, it doesn't get the orange like you see in the sugar maple.
Okay,
and so she says she doesn't know how to tell them apart. Ellie, I don't know how to tell them apart either. Those cultivars, there's so many cultivars. In fact, I have a book on my bookshelf that's that thick. That's all just about cultivars, and yeah, there's so many cultivated varieties. It's really hard to tell.
Okay, I have to tell you, this is probably the most questions we've ever had. So I'm glad you had your presentation at 30 minutes. You know exactly how to do it.
Okay.
Rosalind says, did the trees originated in central China look as good there as here in the fall? I don't know which tree you're talking about, Rosalind.
Yeah, yes.
Yes
no.
I understand now. Yeah.
Yeah, yes or no. So I mentioned
climate.
Yeah, I mentioned Paperbark Maple. I mentioned ginkgo as being originally native to China. Yes, they will be as good here. And again, part of that is they're adapted here. they grow well here. The conditions are good enough for them to grow. And Fred had a question about the Japanese maple. So that's a little bit different. There are literally hundreds of Japanese maple cultivars, and those have to do with leaf size and shape, and some of them are dwarf, and some of them are weeping in terms of the habit. So they're really all very different species or different cultivars of the Japanese maple. From a fall color standpoint, Japanese maple is typically a very attractive. It's normally a red or sometimes a purple. It again depends on what cultivar you get. So if you're going to get a Japanese maple, figure out what the cultivar is, and then look it up online and try to understand what color is predominant for that cultivar. All right, I think I worked through all the questions.
I think that's it. So
Okay.
You guys have about 20 seconds if you have another question. All right, thanks, Paul. That was really very engaging, and obviously everyone's very involved, and I learned a lot too and took a lot of notes as well, so I can start planting trees in my own yard. So I have recorded this. It'll be on our YouTube channel. I put the link in the chat, but if you just go to YouTube and put in the search engine Trees Knoxville, will pop up there. You'll see all our videos there, at least the ones I've remembered to record. And until then, so remember on the 19th, we have Lee Rumble. And if you're a volunteer forester, we have our little happy hour on the 22nd. And for volunteer foresters, we have a pruning workshop coming up as well, October 26th online. And then we're going to go into the field with Casey Krause, and he's going to show us some pruning techniques. Because I don't know about you, but I can never have enough pruning classes. I'm serious. It's such a tricky thing to do. And there are quite a few thank yous coming up into the chat bar. And everyone says thank you. Okay. Good seeing everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.